Hey, it's Sammy for another episode of the IdOMUSIC podcast, and our goal and our mission is to empower and educate musicians and artists worldwide. And on today's episode, we sat down with marketing maven Nick Love discussing how being from Atlanta influenced his movement, how internships helped him in the business, and what he's doing with music and food with the BiteLife ATL. You're now tuned into the IdOMUSIC podcast, and I'm sitting down with Nick Love.
That's me.
Nick Love, the BiteLife ATL. We can take it back to CT, marketing,
All
to
that.
music and entertainment. You just got a lot going on. This journey.
A ton.
How you doing?
I can't complain.
Yeah.
You have like the perfect podcast voice. You have like that smooth, like,
Thank you.
quiet storm shit going on. I dig it. I really dig it.
Shout out to Joyce Littell. Well, okay, so you're from Atlanta. I always get excited when I have a fellow Atlantan, ATLian.
Yeah, born and raised. Grady baby.
Grady baby. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I can't relate. I was Carpet Long baby myself.
Oh, your parents had insurance.
I did.
Nice. Okay.
My sister was born in Grady though, and my mom used to work at Grady.
So y'all was poor at one time.
At one point, yes. We moving on up.
Hey.
So I wanted to ask you, like, how has being born and raised in Atlanta influenced like the way you move?
Oh man, it's everything. I'm a huge proponent of this city. I'm from Decatur. Born and raised in Decatur on the east side of town. And, I like to be as big of an ambassador of this city as I can be. And, like when I come into a room, I want people to know that Atlanta's around, that Decatur's around. You know what I'm saying? I'm super big about that. But, growing up, coming up when I came up, what it has done has really made me appreciative of the progress the city has made. It has made me very anti-New York.
Right.
I'm so like, every time I see like New York Yankee hats or like New York stuff on clothes, I'm like, like,
here we go.
I wouldn't dare ever catch me in a Yankees jersey.
Really?
I don't care if it match everything I got on. It's not happening. But I came up in an era where Atlanta wasn't cool.
Right.
Like when I was young, Atlanta was country and slow. And so, with hip hop being what it was in the 80s, people were, and the amount of transplants that were coming to the city, my high school, my middle school, everything got flooded with New Yorkers, and they was like, man, y'all ain't got this and y'all ain't got that. And I'm like, well, I didn't know we were supposed to have that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this is all I've ever known. And, but as Atlanta became cool, I watched the transition of everybody starting to follow the trends and talk like us and act like us. And I'm like, I'll never forget when a girl told me my accent was sexy. And I'm like, what? Like all my life I've been told I was, you know what I'm saying? Like all my life I've been told I was country.
Right.
And now somebody's like, ooh, say that again. I'm like, man, all right.
It's funny that you say that about New Yorkers and like people just moving down here, because that I experienced that in like middle school, high school too. Mm-hmm. And we used to think that guys from New York were just so cool because they were so different. Like
New Yorkers were the cool guys. I went to
cool.
Redan for 9th and 10th grade, so I went to school with Swiss Beats.
Really?
So Swiss was like a freestyler. Like he actually was the guy doing the beatbox while all the other New Yorkers was rapping.
Wow.
So he was kind of producing even back then, you know what I'm saying?
Fire.
But like Swiss, Lala, from Power, like we all went to high school together.
Yeah.
They're a couple of years older than me, but I remember, and they were the cool ones. They was the New Yorkers, the Spanish girl, the New York dude. He always had the Timberlands, the fly clothes, and we was just the country Atlanta dudes, right? You know what I'm saying? So we've come a long way.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I mean, how do you feel about so many people moving into the city and infiltrating in that way? Like, do you feel like Atlanta is like this melting pot of culture?
I love it to a certain degree. I think that, the influx of people has brought an influx of ideas. Some of the things that I see in the club scene and the fashion scene and just the amount of like boutiques and stuff that have opened up, that's not an Atlanta thing. That's something that people brought from LA, from New York, from Miami, wherever they came from. Mm-hmm. What worries me about the influx of people that have showed up is that a lot of times, like even you say, and we all say this to each other, when we meet another native Atlantan, we're like, wow, you know what I'm saying? Because it's rare that we see each other. And I worry about like the true culture of Atlanta and like what we really are, and even necessarily what that is. Right. If you ask a person who's born and raised here, kind of what is Atlanta, they'll probably all give you a different answer. Mm-hmm. And no matter what the answer is, when we look around, whatever you think that it isn't prevalent here. A lot of the biggest names in this city, from an entertainment standpoint, from a ownership standpoint, they're not from here. Right. You know what I'm saying? So we find ourselves being dictated from someone from somewhere else.
Exactly.
And so, like I said, I'm big on trying to establish a level of like, well, whatever that is. This is Atlanta. I'm Atlanta. So if I'm here and I'm doing and this is how we rocking, like this is some Atlanta shit. And it's not, I try to maintain a level of authority, a level of leadership, a level of ownership of whatever I have going on to make sure that it's as Atlanta as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's important. So you began your career as an artist.
Yeah. Ha.
And
Yeah.
I say an artist because it's a rapper and singer.
Yeah, I used to sing in church.
So you can sing?
Yeah, I can sing. I'm not finna sing now.
But,
yeah.
I used to sing it. Right.
Yeah, I used to sing in church. Like I used to sing and rap in church, but I wanted to be Nate Dogg. I thought Nate Dogg was the
Nate
coolest.
Dogg. I love
I'm
Nate
like,
Dogg.
man, you can sing and curse? That's amazing.
That's dope.
I thought that was like
He was saying all type of ignorant
all
things.
kind of crazy stuff, but singing it.
But
I was
singing it.
like, yo, that's cool. I want to do that.
Kind of like Ty Dolla $ign today.
Kind of like Ty, T-Pain, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All of that, like, I thought that was the wave. But, pre-Drake, pre-all of them,
Right.
Nate was the gangster singer.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And we met this guy, my mentor, Jason McPhee. He had a studio right off of Spring Street where Hot Beats used to be. Well, actually, it's like behind where Hot Beats used to be. But anyway, we finished, me and my guys from high school, some guys I graduated with, we finished our project up and we had paid him to be our consultant. And so
you were in a group.
Yeah, it wasn't a group. It was kind of like a crew. We was like, I was the singer. A couple of my homeboys was like a 4-man group. We had another solo rapper. We had our whole thing planned out, right?
Gotcha.
So we get the project done, a little compilation. We pay my guy Jason to consult us, and Jason says, all right, cool. So who's going to handle the marketing? Who's going to handle this? And who's going to handle that? And we was looking at him like, shit, we don't know. We just thought we just made music and we was famous tomorrow.
Right.
Nobody told us there was something to do after the music was done.
Right.
And he started just assigning roles to everybody. And he was like, all right, cool, you do this, you do that. And he got to me and he was like, you know what, you kind of personable. You be the person that does the marketing. You go talk to the DJs, you go talk to, there's just different people out to kind of get the word out about y'all. And I was like, all right. I just kind of took on the assignment because that's what he told me to do.
Right.
And as I got into it, I was like, oh, I like this. And I never really looked back from there.
That's dope.
Yeah.
So Jason McPhee, talk about how important that relationship and mentorship was in this business at the time.
Oh, man, it's huge because, Jason was the first person that really showed me that you can make money and not be the artist. And that was something that even today I think that needs to be shared more.
Which is kind of why we do this, because it's like, it's funny, but I don't mean to cut you off, but a lot of people that I talk to, they started off as the artist or, they had like a real affinity for... They had a real affinity for the business. I mean, not the business, but the performance side. And then somebody introduced them, a mentor, or you start seeing in the studio like that other person, that other guy doing something else, and you're like, well, wait, he's also looked like he got a little check too. What did you do?
Yeah, and like Jason was doing marketing. He was running the studio at the time and doing marketing. But I remember Jason used to have like an account with Cool Cigarettes, and Jason had an account with like Honda, like some car company, and he was doing all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know what you do, but you're making money, and you're still kind of living the lifestyle that I would want to lead. You know what I'm saying? And I remember him kind of explaining that to me, like, yeah, you don't have to be the rapper to make no money. You can be the manager, the tour manager, the marketing guy, the publicist, the personal trainer, the chef. There was all these jobs behind the scenes that no one ever really told me about. And once my eyes were open to that, I was like, wow, like, so I can still do the rapper stuff, still travel, still kick it, have the rapper lifestyle, and less of the headache, that they have to deal with, and and really have a career out of it. I was blown away, and it was like, yeah, and I had a natural instinct for it. That was the thing that was the best thing that could ever happen to me.
What do you mean, or what do you think qualified you to have like a natural instinct for marketing in particular? Like, obviously he said you were personable. That was
personable, but I'm also a people pleaser, and that's something that has translated in my personal life and my professional life. But when you're anxious to kind of make sure that other people get what they want out of a situation, it makes the marketing stuff a lot easier. I'm able to go into meetings and say, okay, how do both sides win here? I'm able to go into my personal relationships, with women and say, okay, how do both sides win here? How do I get what I want but keep you happy? And that's essentially what you're trying to do as an artist. You're trying to get off your feelings, your emotions, your music, but you're trying to please, the fans, and you're trying to please the record label, and you're trying to please the people who are giving you endorsements and sponsorships. And so there's always this two-sided battle. And if you're a person who's naturally like, I want everybody to win type of person, it works for you, because you can see the playing field very level, and I think it also kind of lends itself to situations where when it's lopsided and there isn't value for one side or the other, you can pull back and say, okay, I don't like this. There's a better way to do this.
I agree. So as you moved into like marketing, or you decided to like step back from the artist side, you began interning for a lot of labels, working with people from DJ Toomp, Dallas Austin, Ludacris, and the list goes on. How would you say interning really led you to that role of like VP of marketing for CTE?
The interning was the best thing that I ever did, because it taught me a bunch of stuff that I didn't know. Like I said, I was really, really raw, and really my objective in my first, I guess, marketing role, based on what Jay said told me, was just to get my group's name out. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it was very...
This was all after high school?
This is all after high school. I was 19, so I was at Georgia State at this point.
So you were in school?
I was in college. I was in my first year at Georgia State, and actually one of the guys who I was in the group was a person I went to high school with.
Gotcha.
So he was my first client, essentially, as we fast forward. But anyway, my original task was very self-centered. It was like, okay, how can I get my thing off? And so as an intern, like my first gig was with DTP, my man Goose. Actually, and it wasn't even, well, it was Disturbing the Peace too, but it was more so Def Jam South at that time. It was Scarface owned it. Ludacris and DTP were like the first, round of, label artists that were off that situation. So they had an office right off of Peachtree, which right now, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's like BurgerFi now. It's like a condo sitting on top of where that office used to be. Wow. But it was right like near Raw Sushi and all that stuff right downtown. And the office sat right over there. And, Goose from DTP gave me my first gig, and he kind of showed me the ropes of like, okay, this is what this is. And he showed me, about passing out flyers and where to go.
How did you get connected with him in the first place?
Oh, if I remember correctly, I might have just sent an email. I might have sent a blind email and was like, hey, I want to intern. And then somebody hit me back.
That's rare.
Yeah, but it just was a time where people submitted demos and sent like random, hey, can I work here?
Right. That
was the era of that. That doesn't happen no more.
Right.
But it was that era of just sending blind emails to somebody and somebody saying, all right, cool, come in. And it wasn't like, I wasn't the only one, but I was the one who people kind of took to because, again, I'm a little bit more personable. I'm from here, and I was eager. I was at Georgia State. Chris was at Georgia State at the time. So there was a little bit of a relationship there. I kind of knew who the players were, because back in that time, Rolling Out magazine and like Creative Loafing was the biggest things in the world to me. And Rolling Out used to have a section in the back that they would take pictures at parties. And so under the pictures would be the names of everybody. So I used to like look at these pictures and memorize who was who. And then I was out, and I would go out and I would say, oh, I know who you are.
That's convenient. You know, it was like pre-Instagram and social media, so you had to go find it.
Nothing. You had to figure it out. You had to like remember faces.
Yeah.
And say, okay, cool, you're Shaka. Okay, cool, I've seen you before. You're so-and-so. You're this person. You're that person. So.
But it's kind of like the same thing applies today, which I try to tell people, like, you can research prior to being like, well, I don't know who, because everything is way more accessible.
Yeah, and that's the thing that kind of bothers me, because I came up in an era where it wasn't as accessible. You had to like really go out and ask questions and figure it out, and you had to run up on somebody to get information. Nowadays, when everything is kind of at your fingertips, I'm annoyed sometimes when I get DMs on Instagram and somebody say, "What you do?" And I'm like, "But you're on my Instagram, so you kind of can get a general idea of kind of what I do, even if you can't pin me down."
That's my frustration too. But I feel like, if you utilize it if you utilize the access for the right reasons and to, your benefit, then it can be helpful. But people don't even want to do that, and you have more access. I don't understand.
Yeah, people say, "Yo, you DJ?" And I'm like, "No." They're like, "You rap?" I'm like, "No." Like,
my Instagram, my profiles don't say none of that.
Like, right. Nothing in my profile, nothing in the pictures. You don't see me any video of me performing,
DJing, nothing.
And I'm just amazed at some of the questions I get. I'm like, man, and the information's right there.
Mm-hmm.
So
I feel the same way. So I totally understand. So what was the greatest lesson that you learned during those times in the business? Internship years?
How to get some money. I was working for free for a while, and then my girlfriend, who later became my wife, she got pregnant, and I was like, I gotta find some money, like now. And I'm working for free, not complaining. But once she got pregnant, I was like, I gotta figure this out. And then it became, the idea hit me again, being a people pleaser. All right, cool. How can I give them what they want so they'll give me some money? Because now, again, I'm seeing the dual sides of it. I need money. Y'all need people to do something. I just got to figure out what the something is.
Right.
And what I realized was I could just go out of town. And so one day I came up with the most creative and clever lie. And I was like, yeah, I told Goose, I said, man, I be going down to like Macon and stuff, So then my people, I ain't never been making my life. I had family in Columbus, but that was it. But I'm like, yeah, I go down to Columbus, Macon, I be all over the place, man. I can just take the records down there to the radio people and to the DJs, and we ain't got to just stay in Atlanta. We can just start working this thing. He was like, you know what? That's worth something. And I was like, man, just give me some gas money and throw me a couple extra bucks. Ride out. That's how I got my first check.
Wow.
My first check was them.
So when you got down to Macon and all these places, what was you doing?
This is how good God is. I got down to Macon. This is the funny thing. So Columbus, I had family. So I could figure Columbus out. I could just call my aunts, call my cousins and say, yo, who's who? I go down to Macon. I stop to get some gas. And the guy I run into is a guy named L.J. Malone. L.J. Malone's mother ran a record store, Habisham Music, down in Macon. Habisham Music record store was like kind of the only thing in Macon. So she sold all the rap CDs, all the gospel CDs, everything. LJ wanted to be in Atlanta. I needed to be in Macon, so we started hanging. LJ tells me, I'm going to introduce you to a DJ. So he takes me to meet DJ Smooth. Smooth, who later becomes Coalition, and he's already on the radio down there. Then I meet DJ T-Love. And all of this happened literally my first day down there.
That's crazy.
And but mind you, here's the value of being me. I'm in a strange town, and I'm the Atlanta guy. So I'm the Atlanta guy who's from out of town. So I'm the new cool kid in town. I got music in my hand. I got new, ludicrous stuff. I had Player Circle at the time. I had Bobby V stuff, and I'm passing stuff out. They like, man, nobody down here looks like you, acts like you, has the stuff that you have and the access.
Right.
Come on in. And from there, I got the confidence to say, all right, cool. If I can figure it out in Macon, and I figured it out in Columbus, I can figure it out in Augusta. I can figure it out in Chattanooga. I can figure it out in Birmingham. And that's pretty much what I did. And I just started to run around, and I really made a name for myself. And it worked out perfectly because everybody else was fighting to be here in Atlanta. And I left and literally just drove an hour or two outside the city every night. And, my name just kind of spread from there.
That's fire. That's a dope story. So what would you say drives you, just generally speaking, not necessarily professionally? Then and now.
Then
did it change? Did drive change?
For sure, yeah. Then I wanted to just make a name for myself. I've always, Nick Love is my real name, right? So that's always helped. When I was a kid,
I was talking. I have to say this about your name because I didn't know for sure if that was your biological name.
Nicholas Love.
So we were talking because I was researching you last night after my other podcast, and I was just like, this man's name is Nick Love. That sounds like some real. Yeah, I'm Nick.
Yeah.
Nick Love. Like real player, like.
But it wasn't player when I was a kid. It was a joke.
Of course.
It was like, oh, Nick loves the teacher. Nick loves so-and-so.
Of course
like,
it was a joke back then.
It was a point of clowning. When I got older, it was like, Nick Love. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? That's when it got real cool.
Real cool.
And, but it also allowed people to remember me. Nobody ever forgot me once they met me. They was like, Nick Love. That always stuck.
Yeah.
And, like having that name was always to my benefit. But then it was just about getting my name out. Like I remember when we first got into it, even with my guys, the original group I was in, when we were doing our music, I remember one of the guys in the group, I won't say his name, but him and his family are pretty well known in the city. So he was the guy, even when we were kids, was like, oh, well, I know him. Every famous person, he's like, oh, I know him. And I don't even know to this day if he actually knew them people. But he was such a bragger of like, I know him. He come to the house. Or I see him everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know nobody. And I got to figure out how to get my name out so that when I walk up to these people, I'm not some strange kid asking for something.
Exactly.
So it was about getting my name out and building a reputation for myself. Now it's like, now that I have kids and I'm older and I've already established a name, now it's like, all right, cool. What do I want to do, from a legacy standpoint? What do I want to do to impact Atlanta? What do I want to do in terms of leaving something to my family? And so it's not as self-centered. Like, I don't really care as much about being Nick Love. That was a thing. Like, my wife, who's my ex-wife, part of the reason she's an ex-wife is because, you know, she would always say, like, you don't stop being Nick Love when you come home. Like, you're Nick Love out there, cool, but when you come home, I need you to be Nick. And you bring this persona and this character or whatever this is home, and it doesn't work here, you know. And and she was right. I was very super guilty of that. But now, you know, as I've gotten older, I'm less about being Nick Love and more so about Atlanta, my family, you know, my impact, my legacy, and how I can help somebody else.
Was it difficult for you to try to balance your family, your marriage, and things like that at the time where you were working?
Yeah,
heavily in the business.
For sure. I wasn't a bad parent, but I wasn't a very attentive father. You know what I'm saying? I had two little girls, and in my mind, especially at 20, you know, I had two kids by the time I was 25. So in my mind, it was like, as long as I'm making money and providing, we good. And as long as I can pay for stuff and y'all got stuff and Christmas is nice and birthdays are good and rent's paid, I'm doing my job.
Right.
What you find out when you're older is like, then it's a little bit more than that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a little more to being a parent and being a father than that. But again, I was trying to be Nick Love and I was trying to build my name. So when Jeezy would call and say, we got to go on tour, I'm like, I'm out. You know what I'm saying? When an artist or somebody would call and say, hey, man, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I need you to come to the club and do X, Y, Z, I'm out. It didn't matter what the family had going on. I missed a lot of family function, a lot of moments in my kid's life trying to establish myself. And so now I just had a new baby.
Oh, congrats.
And thank you. I just had a new baby. My baby's 7-month-old now. And so now with the new baby, I realized a lot of the mistakes I made when I was younger. And now I'm kind of
trying to make up for it.
Yeah, trying to almost overcorrecting to a certain degree. But yeah, it was tough. And then, you know, when you're young and you're making some money, but the money is being split with children, and you're seeing your peers who don't have any kids, and they're out buying cars and moving, getting condos and stuff, and you're like, hold on, I know I'm making money, but my money not going as far as everybody else's money. So it bred a lot of envy,
resentment,
and a lot of resentment. You know, in a lot of ways, I remember being very just kind of not angry, but more so just like, you know, it was always like, damn, I'm never gonna make enough money to be able to kick it like so and so. And I had to grow out of that. I had to learn to like stop watching everybody else's thing because everybody else had their own set of problems. You know what I'm saying? That I wasn't privy to. But, you know, I'm looking at, you know, me and my man, like me and him will do the same job. We make about the same amount of money. He bought a Benz. I still got this other car. I think I had like a Suzuki Rodeo or something at the time. And I'm like, car's cool. It's not a Benz.
It's not a Benz.
You know what I'm saying? And you find yourself being like, all right, cool, I got a crib. But, you know, so-and-so just moved into the 12. Yeah, my place is cool. It's not the 12. You know what I'm saying? And you find yourself comparing and constantly watching. But I had to remember, well, there's a reason I'm not at the 12 because you don't really want to raise kids
in the 12.
In the 12. You know
Definitely
what I'm saying? You don't want to raise kids in a loft that has cement stairs. You know, and those are the things I was looking at and I had to kind of grow out of. And it took a while to get there.
I feel that completely. And that's the important thing to tell people, you know, or to stress to people about not comparing your situation to somebody else.
It'll kill you. And I watch it every day. I watch women do it in relationships. I watch guys do it with other guys' money. I watch people do that every day. And what it does is you're never content with what you got.
Exactly.
And you might have a lot going on for yourself. But if you're watching, you know, so even with you're doing a podcast, but if you're always watching everybody else's podcast numbers, you're never going to be happy with what this is, you know. And if you know, and I watch it, I see it every single day, and it's really disheartening. To one, realize how far I've come. Two, to watch somebody go through it and you're trying to tell them like, stop, because you're gonna years later you're gonna see the error in this,
right? And
just watch them continue down this cycle, and you're like, ooh, that's gonna.
I see where that's going. Yeah. So let me ask you, what drives you when you're struggling? So those times when, you know, you had two baby girls, you know, wife at home, but you were still making these decisions to, you know, go on the road or do whatever you were doing with CTE, which we really didn't get into yet. Okay. But I know you mentioned that was kind of like your big break. Like that was your big turning point in your career of like what you were doing.
What drove me a lot of times, honestly, was ego and expectations. Not even mine. You know, I can honestly say since I was a kid, people have seen me and expected me to be something. You know, I don't have the story of my teacher told me I wasn't gonna be shit. You know, I don't have that story.
Right.
From the time I was a child, everybody was like, Nick's the shit. My parents told me I was the shit. When I would go out to school, the girls told me I was the shit. When I would be in talent shows at school, when I got to college, I was Nick is the shit. So it was that I got to figure this out because I can't have everybody thinking I'm the shit, and then I walk around and I'm not.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So a lot of what I did was trying to confirm the image that everybody else had of me. I had to make it. I had to make this picture make sense. I couldn't be out here broke while everybody think Nick's making money. I couldn't be out here, you know, being a bum while everybody's like, man, you know, I don't want to be the guy that everybody's like, what happened to him? You know, like what's the damn homie in high school? You was the man homie.
Right.
I don't be that guy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So a lot of it was ego. I was like,
Yeah.
I got to get this, and that was what drove me.
True.
Yeah.
Why was the VP of marketing for CTE, which is Jeezy's label, a big score for you?
It was huge because at the time Jeezy wasn't popping yet, so it was my opportunity. Because when I got with DTP, Luda was already Luda. Now he wasn't who he ultimately became, but he was already on. Toomp, in my eyes, was a big deal. Still is a big deal, but he had just done the T.I. album and stuff, so Toomp was already somebody. Dallas Austin he had done TLC and everything at that point, so Dallas, with that whole thing was already huge. Jeezy was a new commodity that nobody was super, super familiar with when I got with him. And it was on those making trips is how I got introduced to him. How I got the job is I was working at the tag office while I was doing the music stuff. King B walks into the tag office to get a tag for the CTE truck. And one of the ladies who knew I wanted to be in the music business was like, yo, you should talk to that guy. So I ran outside and called him, talked to him, and he hired me on the spot.
Oh, wow.
I quit my job immediately. Like, I'm out. I can't, I'm out of here.
That's crazy.
But
what made you get the job on the spot? I'm just looking back.
They needed somebody. They had just moved up to Atlanta. King recognized me from being down the way. He's like, I don't know all of what you do. He said, but I be seeing you moving around. He's like, what you doing here? Because mind you, I got a shirt and tie on the day that he meets me. I'm at the tag office working. He's like, so what's up? I'm like, I got a job. I got kids. I can't be out here messing with y'all. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And he was like, all right, man, well, we need somebody. We just got a crib up in Alpharetta. We working out the house. We're trying to figure it out. And I'm like, bet. So mind you, I quit a job that had like insurance and benefits for a record label that's working out the house at the time. It was a gamble for sure. And I remember telling my mom, I remember waiting to tell my mom, like, because my mom helped me get the job at the tag office. So I got to tell her I'm quitting. Not only am I quitting, but I'm quitting to be in the music business, which has no guarantees.
Right.
And I'm not working for somebody you've heard of, Mom. I'm working for this new guy who I like his music. I think he's going to be big. So, it was a super, super duper break for me. They were willing to pay me. We were going to work out the crib for a little while until we got an office. And it was the thing that kicked off. And it was a lifelong dream of mine at that point. Once I kind of, I wasn't lifelong, but from the time I was 19 and I heard about marketing, at this point, in my mind, I was like, okay, one day, but maybe by the time I'm 30, I'm going to run the marketing for a label. I got the job at 23.
That's crazy.
You know what I'm saying? So at 23 years old, I'm running a label's marketing, and it was like, yeah, like, here's the thing that satisfies my ego, confirms to people that I'm the shit.
Right.
That makes all the sense in the world, and everybody's like, yeah, I mean, Nick works with Jeezy. That makes all, like, it made sense for everything that I had going on in my life, and it was a way for me to support my family, so it was a win-win across the board.
How did you learn and grow in that marketing role, like, in terms of, like, even applying to what you're doing right now? With the BiteLife, with Coalition DJs eventually, and, so on and so forth.
I learned a couple things. One story I'll tell is I remember going to New York for a marketing meeting. We all flew up to New York, and we sat down at the Def Jam office. And I remember me, Jeezy, Kink, Coach K, a few of us, we all flew up, and we're sitting in the meeting. And I'm the marketing guy. So first they asked Coach, because Coach was always on point since I've known him. Coach K is fucking amazing. And they get to me. And
what was he doing at the time?
He was managing Jeezy.
Right,
him and my guy, his partner Yusef at the time.
Yeah.
It ran Emanon. So we go up there, we get to the marketing portion, and it's my time to kind of present the ideas that we have. And I'll never forget that all these New York women, Yvette Davila, all of these, Ashana, all these people who worked at Def Jam, I remember them looking at me after I gave my presentation and was like, what you say? Huh? You talk too fast. This is a meeting, mind you. L.A. Reid's here. Everybody's here, and I'm in the meeting, and they're telling me that I'm country, I talk weird, and I'm super embarrassed, right?
Yeah.
And I remember going home feeling like complete, like shit. But after the meeting, I got on the phone with Yvette, and after she made more jokes, she was like, well, look, this is what you need. This is what you're lacking, this, that, and third. And so she taught me a ton just on one, probably a 15-minute phone call of like, here's what you had all the ingredients, you just didn't present it correctly. And you didn't present it in a way that made us feel comfortable with the direction that you were going. So immediately I learned, okay, I have to not only, it's not enough to have a good idea, I have to be able to sell it to people. And then the other part of that is Jeezy. Jeezy was so hard-headed, and still is to this day, but Jeezy was so stubborn in his belief of who he was that it was difficult at the time to work with him, but what it made me realize is when you know yourself and you're confident in whatever that is, you might make a few mistakes. You may pass on things that shouldn't be passed on. You may take some opportunities that maybe you should have skipped out on, but ultimately, you're going to get where you want to go because you're good with who you are. Jeezy was very like, I'm for the streets. My fans are for the streets. So I don't want to do that endorsement. I don't want to go to that radio station. I don't want to do that interview. And we was just like, man, that nigga's an asshole. But it was like, nah, he really knew what he wanted. And so now I'm the same way when it comes to BiteLife, when it comes to Escobar, when it comes to everything that I'm doing. I'm like, nah, I know what this looks like. I know what I want it to be. And it may not move as fast as somebody thinks it should run, or it may not run in the format or the fashion that it should, but it runs in a way that I'm comfortable with.
Right.
And I had to realize that when you have your own thing, when it works, you get all the praise. When it fails, you get all the responsibility. So it's like I might as well fail my way because you're gonna blame me anyway.
Right.
And that's how Jeezy took it. Jeezy was like, I'm not gonna blow my career on Nick's idea or blow my career on Coach K's idea, because when it flops,
Everybody's looking at you.
Yeah, Nick and Coach can go somewhere else, which we ultimately did. You know what I'm saying? But Jeezy was like, nah, if y'all make a bad decision, I look stupid. And at the time, we was like, man, you got to trust us. But like I said, years later, I'm like, I get it.
Yeah. That's real. And that's a mature thing or mature conclusion to come to.
Yeah.
Especially when egos are involved with everybody's ideas and pride. I get it.
But that's
completely.
the music business. It's all ego.
Super.
You know, you think about this. Everybody in the entertainment industry is an alpha in some form of fashion. The women as well. So all of us that have had some level of success have been told at one point or another, you're really smart. You're really pretty. You're really talented. You're really creative. You're really this. You're really that. I don't care if you're an engineer, a graphic designer, a singer, producer, whatever you are. We've all been told that we have this talent. So when you put all these people who believe that they have talent in a room with each other, there's going to naturally be some pissing contests and some chest bumping. And you have to figure out how to kind of navigate through that.
Right.
I've watched several of us come and go, and I've been here literally since 2003. 15 years later, I'm still professionally in this business, making my way, and I've seen people who lasted a summer, a year, 5 years, and they're out the game.
So let me ask you about the BiteLife. I want to go into Coalition DJs too if we have some time, but primarily because I worked here, and I would always see Coalition DJs. I had no idea what y'all were doing back here, but I was just like, they clearly got something going. But your current venture right now is the BiteLife, mixing food and music, which is very niche, and it's basically a platform where you can check out new restaurants with artists. So you're like fusing the two. What encouraged you to do that? And I kind of know. I really want to know, did you really spend half of your income
For
on
sure.
food?
I still do
50%? Yeah, I was about to say, do you still do that?
I probably don't because I get stuff for free now. But yeah, at the time, I mean, I realized, the story I tell everybody, which is 100% fact, is that I got into the food thing because that's where I spent my money at. And I didn't realize that until I had, my accountant was doing my taxes. And she was like, yo, you spent a lot of money eating out this year. And I was like, I don't know, how much? And then she told me, I was like, is that a lot? She was like, yeah, that's a lot. This is what you made this year. This is what you spent on food.
Do you cook?
This looks crazy. Yeah, I cook.
But you still like to go out and eat?
Well, here's the thing. I eat maybe, 3 times a day like everybody else. It's just what I eat. You know what I'm saying? Instead of getting burgers and fries, I'm going to Houston's.
Get steak.
Yeah, I'm getting steak. You know what I'm saying? So I'm getting food. And what happened was, like I said, I was frustrated with the music business at the time. I had been doing this, burnt out. And, when you're in the marketing role, management, whatever you're doing, what ends up happening is everybody's pulling on you. and asking you for advice and asking you for help and asking you for assistance with whatever they have going on. And I was like, I need a break. I need a hobby. And I'm not into cars. I don't want to fix nothing. I'm not very handy. I'm not into Louis, Gucci, Fendi. I wasn't a sneakerhead at the time. None of those things really applied to me, but I was like, I like to eat. And that kind of became my thing. And just like a dumbass, I turned that into work. You know what I'm saying? I turned the thing that was my release from work into work.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it was the best decision I've ever made, because what it did was expose me to a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have normally been exposed to, because as I was recommending restaurants early on, I was the guy for years that was getting chicken fingers at nice restaurants. You know what I'm saying? Going somewhere really nice and expensive and being like, I'll get the burger. And as I'm telling my friends, about different restaurants, they're like, oh, well, how was this? I was like, I don't know, I had the burger. And I was like, I can't keep telling people to get wings and burgers at high-end restaurants. That looks stupid.
Right.
So I started trying sushi and trying wine and trying different things. But it was the best thing I ever done, man. And to this day, it pays me back tenfold. Not even necessarily in money, but just more so in just the experience of it and just the relationships and interactions that I've built, through it.
Let's talk about that very first interview. This was ATL BiteLife at the time in 2012. It was an interview with 2 Chainz.
Yeah.
And I was just super impressed by all of the motion graphics in the beginning. It was just a whole situation. This was 2012 when people hadn't quite gotten the video thing down.
Shouts out my guy Tori Grimm. He's worked with Tyler Perry, works with everybody to this day.
Clearly,
he's the man.
Clearly he was on some.
He was on the
things
digital content thing early. And I remember
yeah.
him telling me this is gonna be the wave. And I'm like, yeah, I guess, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I just want to see myself.
You were really good too. You seemed like you could take my job.
Well, I was comfortable. I knew what I was doing. I wasn't stepping into a territory that I wasn't familiar with. I was like, yeah, we finna get some food. And I was going out with people that I was cool with.
Right,
so that made it easier. Me and 2 Chainz had a relationship at the time. He was building his name. He hadn't become Chainz, but he was already Chainz, but he wasn't.
People didn't know.
Yeah, people
That's
didn't know.
That's what that interview was primarily about, too.
Yeah.
Just establishing that, I have been working with the Waynes and been on tour with these people for so long. Y'all just now getting on.
Yeah, and I remember before we did the interview, I had interviewed him for something else we were doing, and I'm like, yo, Chainz is dumb cocky, but I love it. Because he's like, nah, I'm just as good as... I remember him telling me that, he should get features. And he was like, I don't want to get a feature from him. I'm better than him. And I was like, he's crazy. He means it.
He reminds me so much of my artist. In both Atlanta, very the mannerisms and just
super cool guy, all swag.
He was fine.
Yeah, all swag.
All swag.
And we did that interview. We almost got kicked out of the restaurant. It was a crazy experience.
Why?
Chainz was late. We only had a certain amount of allotted time to do the interview because they had a big party coming in. And the party was late, so it didn't even matter. But the manager kind of said something kind of sideways. He was mad because Chainz had a hat on and all this stuff. And Chainz was looking like, man, and it just went and left. And it was real sour because I'm like, yo, you rushing us for some people that ain't even here. They're super late.
Right.
They had an appointment at 6. They probably didn't show up till 7. So we had a whole extra hour. We weren't in the way. We were off to the side. It was a whole big fiasco. And I actually ended up writing about it. And that helped as well because when I wrote about it, I got a lot of responses and people being like, "Oh man, that's crazy." The restaurant hit me back and was apologizing. The manager had to personally say something. I mean, the story made the AJC and other outlets of how this this hip hop food show showed up at this restaurant and it became a thing.
Always.
Yeah, so
always a thing, right?
Always.
Interesting. So this is a random question, but you eating Krispy Kreme without the hot sign on?
Yeah, I prefer it without the hot sign.
What?
Yeah, hot
I saw
Krispy
a picture
Kreme.
of you. This is not that random. I saw a picture of you eating Krispy Kreme on your Instagram. I just wanted to know.
Yeah, hot Krispy Kreme tastes like grease.
What?
Yeah, it tastes like grease. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic, but it definitely tastes like butter and grease in your mouth. A cold Krispy Kreme donut tastes like a real donut. That's how a donut should taste, I think. I prefer it. Not an old Krispy Kreme donut, but a cold one.
A cold one.
Not for sure the cold, but nice normal room temperature. That hot thing, it's exciting to see.
I love hot.
But
it's Krispy Kreme donuts.
The taste.
But you're right. It's kind
something
of
to be desired, for sure.
Okay, so let's just get into Coalition DJs real quick. Just the strip club culture and breaking records.
My favorite culture in the world.
Why?
I mean, you know, being a guy, I mean, there was a natural affinity for the strip club. But when I, you know, through Jeezy, when we started breaking records of his through the strip clubs, it became that became the litmus test for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, again, just showing how good God is and how blessed I've been. A thing that I was inserted in for work, I was able to pick up on and observe like the impact that it was having.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and at that time, the strip club was, and still is to a certain degree, but the strip club was just like, if you were in there, you was cool. The cool kids hung out at the strip club. The cool girls hung out at the strip club. The A&Rs, the DJs, the other rappers were there. But
Not anymore, you saying?
not as much. Not as much. I think with the digital streaming content and everything that we have now, there is a bit of there's a different pathway to kind of get your music heard by way more people. But ain't nothing like playing your music for the cool kids and the cool kids being like, yeah, that's how.
I rock with that.
Yeah, you know.
So you got started, or you're one of the co-founders of Coalition DJs.
Yeah, me and X.
And New Music Mondays
Yep.
is a huge thing. I know y'all are, like I said, you were always here at Patchwerk, and I'd be like, dang, I gotta open the door for these DJs.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be so many people in
And
here.
it's funny,
but
we started in the back of a bowling alley.
Really?
Yeah, on the Metro Lanes, off
Metro
Metropolitan.
Lanes.
It was a bowling alley, skating rink thing. They had a studio in the back, which I have no idea why there was a studio in the back.
It's Atlanta.
It's Atlanta, yeah. You know what? That's because Atlanta. That was the perfect answer. But yeah, it was a studio in the back, a nice studio too. And I can't remember who referred us there, but we got in there, and I remember like the early New Music Mondays, because even that was an accident. That started off as we were doing a meeting because so I used to pay the DJs to work records. So there would be times where we didn't have money coming in. You know, there would be a 3-week, 4-month gap of somebody paying us to work a record. So I was like, you know what? We don't talk to each other when we're not splitting money. We should just meet on a regular basis. So it went from just having a regular weekly meeting just to kind of update everybody on what's going on and getting feedback on what we were doing, to one day Funky being like, yo, I told so-and-so to meet us up here. You know, whatever random artist he got cool with at the club. He was like, I told him to meet up, we all gonna be here anyway. And then the person would come in and play music. We was like, you know what? We should just do this. When we meet, tell our artists that want to get with us, come up here, play a song.
Yeah, because I know y'all would have like Future, to whoever, really.
We met Young Thug. We met him at the bowling alley. He was one of our first people that came in. I remember I was like, yo, he's terrible. And this is pre like what he became. This is pre-Stoner, pre all of that. Danny Glover, all of that. Like, this is like old Thug when he was like doing a really, really bad Lil Wayne impression. And it was awful. But it was so funny because my man Doug was managing him at the time, and Doug was like, no, I'm sorry, Bobby was managing him. And Bobby showed me his YouTube numbers. And I was like, nah, not that guy. Ain't no way in the world this guy with this terrible music got these YouTube numbers. And fast forward a few years, you know, Stoner and Danny Glover and all this stuff coming out. I'm like, yo, this your guy? He's like, man, Nick, I've been telling you that for years, that this dude is something amazing. Yeah. And we didn't see it at the time. None of us saw it. That dude's, you know, he is who he is now, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So last thing, just to wrap it up,
Okay.
I'll ask you to define hustle, because you have like a number of different gigs. You have a number of different.
You see
the hustle all day.
Shout out to my girl Robin.
Yeah.
I mean, hustle is, listen, whatever you need to do to really get off and protect what's important to you, whether that's family, you know, your bank account, whatever it is that's important to you, and however you got to do to support that. That's the hustle. I'm someone who has always been pegged as a hustler because I've never really just kind of locked myself into one position. I've been told a billion times over the years, pick a job. Nick, you'll be way more successful if you just focus only on management, or focus only on this, or focus only on that. And for years, that advice used to kind of haunt me. I used to feel like, man, I need to pick something. But I was equally good at everything. I didn't know how to pick. And it wasn't even so much how to pick. It was, I don't want to cut the other things off. And thank God I didn't. You know what I'm saying? Like, having this stream of thought where I'm like, hey, I can do this, that, and third, and I can do really well at all of them. I can do all of that. That's the best thing that ever happened to me. And so, you know, I'm all for the hustle, which is why, you know what I'm saying, I'm supporting my homegirl and her clothing line. This is just me supporting my friend. But beyond that, it's a message to everybody, just saying, yo, man, chase your dreams, do what you got to do to get to them. And, you know, if you stay at it and you stay consistent, you'll get to it.
Absolutely. Well, shout out to Nick Love, to BiteLife.
Shout out to me.
Shout out to everything you've done in your journey. I always heard your name
Yeah,
around.
your name is in motion as well.
That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. But like I said, I always heard your name and like wonder, like, what does this guy do? Like, who is
Everybody,
this guy?
everybody.
Yes.
What does he do?
But
Everything.
it's everything.
Pretty damn good.
I do everything. That's what's up. And tell them where they can find you so they can keep up with what you have going on currently.
The best way to keep up with me is Instagram. Nick Love ATL, NICKLOVE ATL. That's on everything: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm very active on social media. And if you want to reach me, like my DM, I stay in my DM, like constantly answering questions, replying back. I'm not
just don't ask him if he did.
Don't ask me don't ask me what I do. Like just pick up on context clues from the pictures. You know what I'm saying?
Facts.
But anybody who needs help, I constantly am answering like DMs and like giving advice and all of that. So I'm with it.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you, Nick Love, for stopping by. And as always, you guys can find this podcast at IDM Podcast on social media, as well as myself, SammyApproved, on all social media platforms. Thank you again.
Thank you.